This is episode 34 of Cinescope, and nobody wants to be cooped up here forever. Welcome to Cinescope, where our goal is not to criticize or to assign ratings, but rather to celebrate the movies we love, exploring story, characters, music, and relevance to the world around us. I'm your host, Chad Hopkins, and joining me today is Jesi Nelson to talk about one of our favorite films, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Woohoo. Jesi, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I am so very excited to talk about this movie because it is so much better than I remembered it being. Not that I thought it was bad, but it was like, I want to talk about this movie, and I hadn't seen it in so long, and now I've watched it. I'm like, wow, that sort of blew my mind a little bit.
I know. I'm totally right there with you.
So before we do get to talking about that, you were on our bonus episode earlier this week over the live-action Beauty and the Beast, but in case people haven't listened to that just yet, how about you remind us who you are?
Yes, well, I'm Jesi.
Hi, Jesi.
Hi. I am a composer for film and TV. I currently assist Mike Kramer, who's an incredibly talented composer. Please check him out. We do Lego Star Wars, the Freemaker Adventures, and Ninjago, and other stuff. And I also am one of the co-founders of the Sideshow Podcast, which is yay.
You are actually somebody who has had her name appear on TV as part of a credit, right?
Yes, and my name is in blue.
That is amazing.
Star Wars blue. Yeah. I cried.
I bet you did, and that's cool. We got a famous person on the show.
Oh, no.
Well, let's go ahead and advance along. So I want to remind everybody out there that Anchor is a thing, and we have a station over there, and I'm talking about movies every single day. Today I talked about 3 of my favorite Disney animated films, and I did that before I watched this, and now I kind of wish I could go back and adjust a little bit. So I hope that prepares you for this conversation just a little bit. Yeah. But the link to that station will be in the show notes, so you can check it out. And then remember to go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe. Big help to the show, helps us to grow the audience and to just continue going on. So, Jesi, are you ready to talk about this movie?
I am so ready.
Awesome. So we are talking about The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was released on June 21st of 1996. It was directed by Gary Trusdale and Kirk Wise, who also directed the original 1991 Beauty and the Beast, and then went on to direct Atlantis, The Lost Empire, which is another sort of underrated Disney animated film from the early millennium. It was written by Tab Murphy, Irene Mecchi, Bob Sudiker, Noni White, and Jonathan Roberts, but it was based on The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, the book. The music is by, once again, Alan Menken, who did music for The Little Shop of Horrors, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, both the 1991 and the 2017 versions, Newsies, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Hercules, Enchanted, and Tangled. And the songs are by Menken and Stephen Schwartz, who did the musical Godspell. He wrote lyrics with Menken for Pocahontas. He did songs and lyrics for Prince of Egypt and lyrics for Enchanted, and he also wrote all of the music for Wicked, the Broadway musical. So big names attached to this, great music all the way around, and I have some high praise for the music here that we will get to later. The movie stars Tom Hulce, Demi Moore, Tony Jay, Kevin Kline, Paul Candle, Jason Alexander, Mary Wicks, Charles Kimbrough, and David Ogden Stiers. So, Jesi, how about you kick us off? What was your first experience with this movie?
So, the first time that I saw this, I was very young. I must have been, I don't know. Well, hold on. It came out in 96. So, I had to have at least been 8. Ugh. That just gave my age away. I was at the eye doctor, and I loved going to my eye doctor because he always played Disney movies. And we didn't have a ton of them growing up. We had the quote-unquote essentials, if you will, so like The Little Mermaid and Aladdin. But this was like a newer one, and I hadn't seen it, and I remember just, like, I did not want to go into my appointment because I'm like, no. we gotta watch this movie. Like, this is important. And then I had to go in to the appointment, and I just kept asking for the TV, so they had to turn it on in the back.
That is so good. I was
such a needy kid.
It's funny, the movies that we see in the weirdest of places. Like, I think I saw The Emperor's New Groove on a demo TV at a Sam's Club.
Wow, that
I just
is
stood there the whole time while
totally
my
random.
parents went shopping or whatever. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
dentist office
totally.
or doctor's office, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And it stuck with me ever since. And I actually never had it as a kid. So it was kind of one of those like treasured ones where I was like, ooh, like I know it, but I don't. But I remember being very moved by the music and kind of, well, terrified.
Right. It's not entirely a child-friendly musical, and it got some controversy at the time because of that.
Yeah, totally. And just that, even the opening, I mean, that was very jarring for me as a kid. Well, still, even now.
Right, right. My first experience, like Beauty and the Beast, I owned this movie as a kid, I think, on VHS, but also like Beauty and the Beast, it wasn't one of the staple Disney movies. Those were reserved to like Aladdin or The Lion King. Those are the movies that I watched all the time. And so I did watch it. I did like it as a kid, I think, but there definitely are those scary elements in this movie. But over the years, as I've grown older and learned more about music and just gotten into storytelling a lot more, my appreciation for this film has matured and grown over time. And it was actually the sort of mutual love we had for the cast recording of the
Yes,
stage
yeah.
production that got us together and said, let's talk about this movie on the show. It is one of those classics, and like I said, watching it today, it's climbed my list of Disney films quite a bit, so I'm really excited to dive in a little bit more. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's talk about the story.
Yeah.
What parts of the story do you like here, Jesse?
Oh my gosh. Really kind of the whole, I hate to sound cliche, but the whole thing. I mean, it's so well written, and of course the novel was there, but also just so well executed as a film. And can't help but really, really feel for Quasimodo for so many different reasons. But I love his character because he doesn't, well, this is more on character, not story, forgive me. But he's never like whining or like begging for attention. He's just, he doesn't know any better. And I think that Tom Hulce does such a great job with him. But to get it back to the story a little bit, sorry.
No worries.
um, yeah, in terms of story, I mean, it's just so relevant for today, and society and how quick people are to judge. There's so many things in the story. I don't know. Maybe you should lead on this and then I'll chime in because I'm just overwhelmed with the whole story. I literally just got done watching it, so I'm
Okay,
still
no
kind
worries.
of in like, ooh, that was amazing.
Right. Well, from the very first shot of the church,
Mm.
the visuals of this movie are outstanding. You're above the clouds. You're looking down. The towers of the cathedral are poking up above the clouds, and you hear this choir going to town, and it is amazing. And you slowly descend to see the buildings of the city of France, of the city of Paris, excuse me. And it's gorgeous from that shot onwards. You have
Yeah.
the opening shot, you have the glimpses from the bell tower looking down into the city, and you also have even the flames in the city later in the film provide this beautiful backdrop for the story. It's just one of Disney's prettiest looking animated films, I think, in every respect. But also the scene you were talking about at the very, very beginning with the bells of Notre Dame, the storytelling intro to the film, it also reveals the movie's darkness. Like, this is easily the darkest movie that I think Disney has done, with maybe one or two exceptions, like The Black Cauldron back in the 80s was a dark time for Disney.
Right.
But this one, you see Frollo hanging a baby over a well, ready to drop him.
I mean, he essentially, depending on how you look at it, a woman dies by his hand, whether intentional or not.
Right, right. And the archdeacon of the church holds him responsible for that.
Yes.
And so,
yeah.
I mean, from the very outset of the film, you see Frollo's cruelty, you see his hate for the gypsies, you see his lack of guilt or compassion. And essentially, the only reason he lets Quasimodo live is because of the fear of God brought to him by the archdeacon himself. And actually, it's the church, the statues on the church looking down on him and sort of representing God looking at him, those very detailed eyes that they've drawn into the church. That's what kicks off the movie. And it's really sort of harrowing in a way.
Oh yeah, those, and I remember being so scared as a kid of those statues. I also have a weird fear of statues, so that did not help. But yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid watching Fantasia, I could never make it all the way through because the Night on Bald Mountain scene with Chernobog.
Oh yeah,
He's not a statue, but he's very gargoyle-esque.
But yes,
And so,
yeah, totally.
that scared me a lot as a kid. But more than any other Disney film, I think, or at least any Disney film that comes to mind, this film's story is its music.
Yeah.
Every song really contributes in a huge way to the story of the film. So there's more story yet to come when we get to the music section, when we talk about individual characters, because so much is given to us by Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz. Mm-hmm. The religious themes in this movie speak to me in a big way because I am a Christian, and it's critical of people in the church in a good way, I think, as in it makes us look into ourselves. And it's not just like making fun of us. It's not saying we're awful people. It's just saying reconsider how you approach the world.
Totally.
And how you approach prayer and your relationship with God. And in that way, it's also critical of all people. The church is the center of this whole movie. And the central message is essentially be kind to people. Mm-hmm. And that resonated with me a lot in this viewing, especially. So all that story stuff aside, let's go ahead and talk about characters. So how about with Quasimodo? What do you have to say about Quasimodo?
Oh, man. He's the best. I mean, he's such a sad character, but he himself...
he's full of joy.
Yeah, he's so full of joy because he's, so naive to the world, and that's not his fault. My heart breaks for him every time I watch the film or any scene he's in. But it's also really beautiful to watch.
He's very different than I think we would expect of someone like him. He's this character who's been isolated for all of his life and told by Frollo, his mentor, quote unquote, however you want to look at him, that the world is cruel, the world is wicked. There's no one out there who would love you.
Right.
You would be ridiculed and criticized the moment you step outside of the walls of this church. And in contrast with what he's been told, he has such a kind heart.
Yeah.
The very first thing we see of him is aiding this little baby bird and encouraging him to try flying for the first time. He says, "Oh man, it's a beautiful day. If ever there was a day for me to try and fly, it'd be today." And he says the quote, "Nobody wants to be cooped up here forever." And so he encourages this bird, and the bird is released, and he goes out and he's flying, and everything's successful. And then Quasimodo has this moment of sort of introspection where he's like, well, there goes my little friend who's been hanging out with me.
Yeah.
And now I wish I could leave here because nobody wants to be cooped up here forever. So it is heartbreaking. He's an artist. He's a craftsman. He's good with his hands, and all with this exterior of a beast, basically.
Totally.
The same sort of predicament that the beast in Beauty and the Beast has. Mm-hmm. And so he has this conflict between everything he's ever been taught versus waiting and wanting to spend just one day out there.
Yeah.
He says, "I'll be content with my share. I'll have spent one day out there. Like, if I could just have one day, I'll be happy for the rest of my life." And that is really sort of heartbreaking in a way, because one day would make that much of a difference in his life. That's crazy. But we're looking from the outside in, and he's on the inside, and he's living that. So, yeah. It's definitely an emotionally affecting character.
Yeah, totally.
And then you have the whole, it's not even a love triangle because it's not confusing.
Right.
But you have Quasimodo falling for Esmeralda. And as much as that hurts him, he doesn't let it stop him from helping and to protecting and rescuing to the best of his ability. He rescues her from the fire. The only time he gives up is when Frollo has convinced him that it is his fault that they've been captured, when he leads them to the Court of Miracles. And in that moment, he's a victim of manipulation, because we'll talk about Frollo as this king of manipulation.
Yeah.
And then the gargoyles, in that moment where he's chained to the pillars overlooking the burning, they say, "We're made of stone. We just thought you were made of something stronger."
Yeah.
And what's really cool is when you consider the stage version of the film, the gargoyles are figments of his imagination.
Right.
And so in that moment, he's basically encouraging himself when they say that, right? It's him thinking, okay, I can do this despite what I've been told all my life. I'm strong and I can make a difference and people can appreciate me for it. And he takes that chance, and it's amazing.
It's so, and there's a whole, and of course we'll go into this more later, but there's a whole song actually that Stephen Schwartz wrote called "Made of Stone."
Yeah.
Based on that, and it is one of the showstoppers. So yeah, we'll have to come back to it because it's amazing.
And one of my favorite moments with Quasimodo is when he has rescued Esmeralda and he carries her to the center of the church in between the two towers with the giant round stained glass window, and he shouts "Sanctuary."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And the way it moves in between the score. Oh my gosh. It's, I'm usually a weeping mess at that point.
It is definitely so very heartfelt, and Quasimodo is just a character who, I think as a kid, he's supposed to be deformed or everything, but Disney has in a way normalized him. And I think that's very good on Disney for helping even kids to see this is a person.
Yeah.
He's different, but he's a person. And so you're able to really identify with him a lot. And I love that.
Totally. Oh, yeah, totally.
So let's get on to Frollo. So as opposed to Quasimodo's kind heart, you've got Frollo with the cruelty. He's self-righteous. He's manipulative. He's ruthless. He's ready to kill an infant at the start of the film, right after killing its mother.
Yeah.
And not feeling even a lick of guilt.
Nope.
He's incapable of accepting blame for anything at any point in the film.
Yeah.
When Quasimodo's mother is killed, he says, God works in mysterious ways. And then when he finds himself lusting after Esmeralda, he says, she's a witch. She has placed her spell on me, and this is not my fault. You know me, God. You know me, Mary. I am a pious man, and I have been tempted by this seductress. And that's insane. He is incapable of accepting anything as his fault.
He's like the epitome of a narcissist. It's awful. It's terrible.
He uses a couple of times the phrase made an example of. And I think anybody who uses a phrase, let's make an example of them, I think that's an awful person because there are so many better ways to teach a lesson than by making an example of somebody. And especially in this case, there's one of those moments when he says it and he sets somebody's barn on fire just because they might have possibly harbored people he doesn't like.
Oh, it's terrible. Oh my gosh, I should not be getting this angry. I'm like...
No, you should. We should all be getting this angry because, there are people like Frollo in the world and it is awful.
Yes, there are. Oh, and I don't understand it. Yeah, I think that his character really rang out for me this time that I viewed it again. Because, of course, as a kid, I was like, yeah, he's the bad guy, he's the villain. But, now as a much older adult, yeah, I mean, like, he's a very sick man. And I'm sure, I mean, I hope not, but I'm sure many of the people that I know probably know somebody like him or that have characteristics of someone like him. And it's scary and it's unfortunate.
It is. And to humanize him just a little bit and give him a little bit of humanity to identify with. Mm-hmm. When he sings Hellfire, you can see how he is lamenting a little bit. Look at these feelings I feel. I haven't felt them before. What is happening? But instead of accepting blame for that himself, he blames somebody else. And then further than that, he pursues her and seeks her death and her punishment for this feeling that has overcome him. So I think all of us have those situations where we feel guilt for something, or there's something where maybe we were conditioned one way growing up to think a certain way or to look at a certain group of people a certain way. And we feel that twinge, but it's how we respond to that identifies us. And Frollo responds by, she chooses me or she chooses a fire.
Whoa. Yeah, and I think too, that was something I noticed as well this time, was you can kind of see like the torture in his face. It's hard to watch, but it's such a good song.
It is. And I mean, good on Disney for taking a chance and writing a song called Hellfire.
Yeah. I know there was a lot of controversy on this one, and like, especially with how they were drawing Esmeralda dancing in the fire or whatever.
Right.
But, oh man, yeah, I don't know if I would have the same feelings towards the show if that song was not in there.
It's all about Frollo's just fear of the different. That's all it is. Different.
It's so true. That's such a great way of putting it, yeah.
But he does have this excellent ending, I've got to say, because he stands on this gargoyle that is sticking out from the edge. He holds his sword over his head and he says, and he shall smite the wicked and plunge them into the fiery pit. And that's not a real Bible verse or anything, but it sounds like he's quoting one. And he's clearly trying to quote God. He will smite them down. He will plunge you into the fiery pit. Mm. And in that moment, after he says it, before he's able to swing the sword, the gargoyle crumbles beneath him. And he is plunged into the fiery pit. So it's like this retribution, the church acting against him. You don't represent me, and I will be the one smiting people down, and you have just been smitten, basically.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah, it was such a great payoff.
Right. I think that's a great example of poetic justice.
Yes, that's exactly it, yeah. And quite dark for Disney.
It is, but I also love that it doesn't come at the hands of Quasimodo.
Right.
That is one thing, reading up on the musical, I think that Quasimodo actually tosses Frollo over.
He does.
And I'm not a huge fan of that. It might play over pretty well in the musical, but I really like this idea of Frollo falling because of his own overconfidence and
Sure.
His own hubris working against him.
Yeah, in the musical, if you think that this version is dark, man, you got to see the musical. Holy cow! I was not prepared for that moment in the musical.
Well, what about Esmeralda?
Oh yeah, I mean, she was like, I wanted to be here when I still want to be here, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to be here when I was a kid. The free spirit, the beautiful woman, but most importantly, she doesn't judge.
Right.
Like, because she spent her whole life being judged as a gypsy, it's the what's the word I'm looking for? Her and Quasimodo share that in common, where they're just very kind and they're very open, even though you'd think they would be incredibly sheltered or judgmental. Or yeah, she's such a great character too.
Yeah, I looked up gypsies, or maybe even like a little bit of historical significance to the gypsies and why they might have been persecuted.
Mm-hmm.
And basically all I could find is they were different. I can't find a whole lot because a lot of them are Christian. Some of them identify with other religions, but the majority, from what I can tell, have Christian beliefs. And so there was nothing that Frollo really had against them other than the fact that they were persecuted against by tradition.
Mm-hmm.
They were outcast. They were forced to live in poverty. They have this safe haven for themselves because they can't live anywhere else for fear of their lives. And so they were literally just persecuted for being different, for being gypsies. And Esmeralda, like you were saying, she's this other character who has this pure heart, just like Quasimodo. Her and Quasimodo and Phoebus, who we'll talk about in a second, all of the three of these characters have just these purest of hearts, and I love that. And Esmeralda is also this other example of Disney creating these awesome, strong female characters in the 90s.
Yes.
Starting with The Little Mermaid in 89 with Ariel, then you have Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and you have Nala in Lion King, and you have Pocahontas, all these characters who are just so strong and confident, and they're female and strong and confident, and that is so good for Disney.
It is.
And I mean, there's a scene in this where she takes on Captain Phoebus, and even though he's sort of half-heartedly playing around, she does beat him, and she does
totally
strike him in the face. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's very strong, and she stands up to Frollo in the middle of the crowd of everybody, and she is just this great, strong female character who has a pure heart. She sees past Quasimodo's deformities and lets him show his heart that's hiding behind the sort of rough exterior. And then you have the song God Help the Outcast, and she prays for the poor and she prays for the marginalized, as opposed to all these regular churchgoers who are praying for wealth and fame and things for them. Mm-hmm. And so she knows how to approach things from a way that benefits others rather than herself.
Yeah.
So I love Esmeralda.
Me too. She's such a perfect foil to Frollo. And I remember God Help the Outcasts. The first time I saw the movie, that was definitely the song that stuck out to me. I actually think that I prefer other songs now, but yeah, as a kid, that was definitely the one I was singing when I was running around the house.
Yeah, I think God Help the Outcast is one of those songs that really hits you hardest emotionally. Mm-hmm. It's not the most fun song for obvious reasons, though that reserves Out There, I would probably say.
Yeah.
But it is a beautiful song. It's gorgeous, but it also is convicting.
It is. Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
So then we have Phoebus, which is the fourth Kevin Kline character I've watched this weekend.
But isn't he the best?
He is. I love Kevin Kline. Yeah. If you haven't listened to the Beauty and the Beast bonus episode, I talk about how Bob's Burgers is one of my favorite shows. And he plays a character in that show called Mr. Fischoeder. And every time I hear Kevin Kline's voice, no matter where it is, I think of these specific lines from Bob's Burgers of Mr. Fischoeder. And it's a curse. I can't get past it. But luckily that doesn't take away from how much I like Phoebus as a character. So as I was saying earlier, he is a character with a good heart. He gives up this promising career in order to do the right thing. He stands up to Frollo again, just like Esmeralda did, except at almost a little bit of a greater cost this time, where he's well, obviously he's fired, but then he's chased down and shot down and left for dead in the river.
Right.
So what do you have to say about Phoebus?
I totally agree 100%. And I love that he comes in pretty cocky. So you're not really sure at first. You're like, uh-oh, is he going to be like a mini Frollo, or is he just going to play the, the typical cocky dude? But no, he really turns it around, and he becomes so endearing because he is, he like pokes fun at the situations and stuff, but also because, yeah, he has such a pure heart as well.
And one thing I love about him extending that pure heart, yes, he does the right thing. He saves that family whose house is being burnt down by Frollo as they're sitting inside of it. And then he sees like Quasimodo's jealousy for him and Esmeralda's relationship. As yes. Quasimodo has fallen for Esmeralda, he sings the song Heaven's Light about how I never expected anybody could love me, but here I am suspecting that she might. Yeah. And he sees that Phoebus and Esmeralda have fallen for each other. He knows that Esmeralda's not going to go for him. Mm-hmm. And Phoebus recognizes that, and he says, he gives Quasimodo the credit. Yeah. So when they journey together down to the Court of Miracles, he sees Quasimodo sort of skulking over in the corner, and he pulls him over and says, actually, I wouldn't have gotten here if it weren't for Quasimodo here. He's the one who led the way, and look at the good things he did. Previous to that, he actually points out to Quasimodo, he says, Esmeralda is lucky to have a friend like you. And so he's aiming to make Quasimodo feel better as well. So yes, he's doing the right thing in regards to his work, but he's also doing the right thing in making a friend feel like he belongs as a friend. And I love that.
Totally. I love that too. That was definitely one of my favorite parts again, watching when his first encounter with Quasimodo, as you were saying, when he was just like, he tells Quasimodo to tell her, Esmeralda, something, and then he looks around again and he's like, and tell her that, she's lucky to have a friend like you. I was like, oh.
Right. And this is right after Quasimodo has like chased him down and is waving this torch in his face. He has no reason to be kind to Quasimodo in that moment because he's being entirely antagonistic.
Yeah, he's holding him by the neck. Like
That's actually a pretty funny scene. Also, can you put me down?
Put me down.
And the camera pans out and you see him holding him 3 feet above the stairs.
I love that.
But yeah, it's his calm in situations like that when he really had no reason to be the good guy. No, he could have fought back against Quasimodo if he had wanted to, but he doesn't. And he makes Quasimodo feel good instead. And that's an attribute of a good character in my book. Yeah. So
yes, totally.
Were there any other characters you wanted to mention? Those are the big four, but there might be another. What do you think of the gargoyles? Do you like them?
I love the gargoyles. I love them so much. It's so funny to hear Jason Alexander in there.
Jason Alexander.
He's so good.
Charles Kimbrough and Mary Wicks. And this was actually Mary Wicks' last role before her death. It was released after she died. She died in 1995. This came out in 1996.
And I cannot remember who came in and actually finished the role for her.
I don't remember for sure either, but Mary Wicks has one of those classic voices that...
Yes.
I think everybody knows who she is, even if you don't know the name. She was in White Christmas as the hotel attendant, and she was in the Sister Act films as the elderly nun, and she was in the Little Women with Winona Ryder as Aunt March. So I think everybody knows her, even if you don't know the name, and she does a great job. She's sort of the normal gargoyle character, yes. The most like a person, and the one who gives the most encouragement to Quasimodo.
Yeah, and I loved Clopin. Is it Clopin or Clopin?
I think it's Clopin.
Clopin, okay. Jeez, this is like the Chopin.
Right.
I can never say that name right, which is ridiculous because I've played classical piano since I was 2 years old, and I'm still like, Chopin.
Close enough.
What a cool character, and I love that he opens with Notre Dame, the bells of Notre Dame.
He's sort of our narrator in a sense.
Yes. And actually that was originally just spoken, and they said that it was too boring, and so they turned it into a song, which is like crazy to me because...
It is, because Bells of Notre Dame is like such a great framing song.
The song. Yeah. And the theme is incredible, and Paul Candle, whew, he's got one heck of a voice. Paul Candle's
that is
singing
one
voice.
Heck of a tenor.
Oh my gosh. Every time I wait for that, the very last note on the Bells of Notre Dame, I'm just like...
He goes all out, and it's so good.
Oh man, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so Clopin doesn't have as much of a character in the animated film as much as he does in the musical.
Uh-huh.
but he's still one of my favorites because he just kind of keeps the story going. But he's fun.
He gets the opportunity to play a little bit of every kind of character. He's a narrator.
Yes.
He's the antagonist at one point when they first get to the Court of Miracles. And at the end of the film, he's the one encouraging Quasimodo. He says, 3 cheers for Quasimodo, and leads everybody in a cheer for this new hero of the city. And so he is a cool character in the sense that he gets to play a few different kinds of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess shout out to the Archdeacon, who's David Ogden Stiers, who was Cogsworth in the original film. He's small part here, but at the very beginning in Bells of Notre Dame, he's the one who stays Frollo's hand in killing Quasimodo, infant Quasimodo. And then later in the film, he's the one who sort of harbors Esmeralda right before God Help the Outcasts. Mm-hmm. And he says, maybe I, as a church official or other people in here can't help you, but there is somebody here, as in the church, as in God, who can help you. And that's what kickstarts the song, her basically praying for the helping of her people. With that, let's talk about some music, as if we haven't been talking about music this whole time. But let's talk about music. And I just want to start off. I've already disclosed this to you. I think this is Alan Menken's best work, period. Like, this is his most beautiful music, in my opinion.
Yes, no, we had talked about this the other day when we were recording for Beauty and the Beast, and I was like, I don't know, because Beauty and the Beast is up there for me, and Pocahontas is really, really high up there for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
But man, after seeing it again, I think I very hesitantly have to agree with you.
Yes, victory.
Because it's so good. I mean, it's like, if you talk about an earworm, because, as a composer, you always hope to write melodies that are going to stick in your ears, but like this is just, it's beyond an earworm because it's so epic. And for me, whenever I am humming the themes or whatever, it's like I can hear the whole orchestra behind me, and I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I think there's something about religious music that always brings out the best in composers. For examples, you've got Handel's Messiah, you've got Mozart's Requiem, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, all these compositions that are structured around the church, basically. And largely, that's what Hunchback of Notre Dame is. The church is the center of this whole story. It's called Notre Dame, right? And so you have lots of like the Catholic Mass integrated into this score. And you have Dies Irae. They say Kyrie eleison all the way throughout the film, which is, I think, is like, so help me God. I want to look that up so I'm not misquoting.
It's God have mercy.
That's right. Thank you. So Kyrie eleison, God have mercy. And all these other things all through Hellfire. You have this classic prayer interspersed with Frollo trying to claim innocence from his lust. And so there's a lot of religious stuff in this score and in the songs. And I think that's a strength to the film, because with the church, you have stuff like organ and you have these massive choirs. And so Alan Menken has this entire tool shop of musical techniques and this whole wheelhouse of these classic texts that he can draw from in order to build this into something bigger than he had done before, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And what a dream job. Like, holy man.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you get the bells, like, just to add to it, because those, that's actually like the sound of bells, or like tubular bells, are one of my favorite things to use in scores. And not a lot of scores call for them, like 2. That's terribly inaccurate. But no, I mean, it's hard to be able to actually incorporate them into music. And so that's another reason that the score, I mean, just the instrumentation, as you were saying, is bonkers, and I love it. I would kill for a job like that.
You've got the choir that opens and closes the film in the Bells of Notre Dame, and then you also have that same choral motif, the etc., in Hellfire. And it contrasts between this joyful, happy sounding choral stuff at the beginning and at the end, like when you're supposed to feel happy at those points in the film. But then in Hellfire, it sounds desperate. Yes. It's antagonistic in a way, because it's this man who's struggling with his faith and with his desire. And it's the same motif, but the way Menken orchestrates around it brings it in, or sheds 2 different lights on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, overall, the score it's dark, it's brooding, but like I said, with the choir, it's able to be joyful and bright at many points in the film as well. And with the songs, as I already said, every song tells a story in this movie.
It really does.
Yeah, you've got Bells of Notre Dame as a framing device. Out there is Quasimodo's thirst to be among people. Heaven's Light / Hellfire is this contrast of the love Quasimodo has for Esmeralda and the lust that Frollo has for Esmeralda. And then you have God Help the Outcast, which is Esmeralda's prayer for her people. And there are one or two, maybe lesser songs, if you want to consider them that way, like A Guy Like You, the song, sung by the Gargoyles. But aside from that, every song in this film is very, very high on the storytelling list. And I think it's the combination of the religious overtones in the score and that toolbox that he's brought to the table with the storytelling in the songs that elevates it for me so high.
Totally. 100% there with you. Yeah, I'm trying to think. This is sort of off topic real quick. Does Phoebus sing in this one?
Actually, I don't think he does.
I don't think so either.
No, I don't think there's a single song for Phoebus.
Huh.
Definitely contrasts with the stage version.
Yeah. That's strange.
And a little strange too, because Kevin Kline has proven that he can sing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah. Huh.
Well, anything else to say about the music?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I could probably write a book, but no.
I think I could too. I've been raving this whole time.
Yeah. It's a good thing. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It's such a beautiful score.
It is. And we're going to give you reason to go listen to more of it because we're going to talk about the musical just a little bit in a few minutes. So go listen. Go watch. Go watch.
Go watch. Go cry your face off. I feel like I'm missing something here about the music, but I got nothing. It's almost perfect. Actually, it probably is perfect.
It probably is.
Yeah. So you might say it's almost perfect. Come on.
So let's talk about some takeaways. So one of the big takeaways I got is this idea of love versus lust, right? And it's contrasted with this back-to-back song of Heaven's Light sung by Quasimodo and Hellfire sung by Frollo. Quasimodo sees a person who showed him kindness in a world where nobody has ever shown him kindness. He starts off for 20 years, he's only communicated with Frollo, and he's told him that he's ugly, he's a monster, nobody would ever love him. Then he goes down for the Feast of Fools, and he's tied to this spinning wheel and is thrown food at, and people do the same thing that Frollo has always said they would do. But then Esmeralda comes out and unties him, stands up to Frollo, and is somebody who has loved him, somebody who shows him love. And that contrasts with Frollo, who sees Esmeralda dance and only sees this attractive woman who can give him pleasure. Mm-hmm. And so there's this contrasting idea between these two characters who are very closely tied together, but the way they approach this woman and because of their experience in life, the way they approach this woman is so different. So it's love versus lust. And another one I had was compassion versus condemnation. So you have Frollo who sees the evil in the world, or a perceived evil in some cases, and he wishes to purge the world of it. He's not looking to reform or to help or to show compassion in any way. He doesn't see evil in himself even, and we see it because, we're seeing it from the outside, but he is this character who wants to rid the world of evil. Whereas Quasimodo sees the happiness in the world and sees the joy in the world, and he's shown condemnation by Frollo, but like I was just talking about, he's shown compassion by Esmeralda. Mm-hmm. There's that scene where they're together on the top of the cathedral, and he has told her that I'm a monster, I'm ugly, I can't go outside. And she comes up and she reads his palm because she's a gypsy and says, nope, I don't see him. There's no monster lines. So I guess Frollo was wrong about you, and maybe he's wrong about me too. And so it's all about showing compassion and showing people out there that you care and that there are people who care about them. And that Frollo can be wrong in that instance, too.
Totally.
Any for you now?
My very basic takeaway, yours were very beautifully put, and mine is going to seem so boring in contrast, but the central theme is just be kind. And it's really, I always say this to people, and it's very cheesy, so forgive me, but it's the easiest thing in the world to be kind to each other. So just do it. It's really not hard. It's really not hard.
Well, I've got this one more that's about inside versus outside, and it's sort of along the same lines of what you were just saying. Mm-hmm. The concept of inside and outside appear in a couple of ways. There's appearance, so Quasimodo's exterior versus how good a person he is on the inside.
Yes. Yeah.
And Esmeralda, who is this beautiful, in some ways seductive woman, but that's not who she is on the inside.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And then there's the idea also inside versus outside, inclusion versus being an outcast by society, whether you're a gypsy or you're a hunchback, or whether you're anything else that might garner you criticism for one reason or another. And there are songs that really display this as well. So you've got Out There and you've got God Help the Outcasts. Mm-hmm. Both of these songs are criticisms of people who know prosperity in some form, or at least are not poor, not living on the streets, but still ask for more. Right. So Quasimodo addresses this in Out There with the line, heedless of the gift it is to be them. If I were in their skin, I'd treasure every moment, every instant. And so he says, they don't know how to appreciate the situation they're in. I'm in the situation I am, and I look down on them every day, and I see the baker and I see the miller and their wives, and they don't know what it's like to be as prosperous as they are in this moment. I don't have that, and I want that just for an instant. I want that, even if it's just for a day. Yeah. And then, as I talked about earlier, Esmeralda addresses that in God Help the Outcast. Mm-hmm. There are the other churchgoers who say, I ask for wealth, I ask for fame, I ask for glory to shine on my name. And she contrasts with, I ask for nothing.
Nothing.
I ask for nothing. I can get by, but I know so many less lucky than I. No. And then she closes the song with, I thought we were all children of God. We're all children of God. Why does it matter? God help us all.
The tears are going to start. Yeah.
The lyrics are beautiful here. Stephen Schwartz is so good at writing lyrics.
Oh,
and
totally.
Paired with Mencken's music, they're unstoppable.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so there's that concept of inside versus outside. And one of the shots in this movie that really got to me was at the very end of the film when everything's said and done, Frollo's dead, and Phoebus and Esmeralda walk out of the front doors of the cathedral. And Esmeralda turns back and she reaches towards the camera. You know she's reaching towards Quasimodo, but the way they frame the shot is she's reaching out to you, and she's reaching out to me, and she's reaching out to all of us.
I love that.
And this idea that, come on, let's go be part of the world. Let's let people show compassion, show people who you are. And that's beautiful. I mean, that shot was so masterfully done by Disney, where you see Esmeralda reaching out to you. Well, anything else to say about takeaways or anything like that?
No, I think you beautifully covered them. My God, they were so philosophical, and mine was just like, be kind.
I showed you my notes before this. They're very dense. They fill every single bit of the page. There was a blank space here. I'm showing her in the Skype camera, everybody.
Just one blank
and so
space.
I wrote something in there too because it was too blank. So
you can't have any of that.
No. So what about final thoughts?
Final thoughts. You have swayed me, sir. I think it's up there now for me as one of maybe his best. I'm so hesitant to say it. But yeah, it's a beautiful story. It rings true through today.
Rings like a bell, you would say?
Oh my gosh. I didn't even mean to. And if you haven't seen it, I very strongly urge you to go see it.
If you have seen it, go see it. Because like I said, this it had been so long since I last watched it, and I wasn't prepared to enjoy it as much as I did. I knew I would enjoy watching it because I know I like the movie, but this, like I said, jumped so high on my Disney animated films list. And I'm looking forward to probably watching it again soon because I enjoyed it that much this time around.
Yes. No, me too.
So if me raving for 50 minutes about the music in this movie and the themes of this movie and the takeaways and all those kinds of things doesn't convince you, man, I guess I need to get a new job. Because I love this movie is so good, and I think everybody needs to watch this. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, whether you're consider yourself a good person, whether you're a hunchback, a gypsy, I don't care. This movie has so many good takeaways to just be a good person. Go out there and love people.
Yeah.
And that's it, I guess. Well, actually, I sort of skipped over this. Let's talk about the musical for just a second. So I don't have a whole lot to say about it because I haven't seen it, but there was a cast recording of the original cast that premiered at the La Jolla, I think it's pronounced, theater. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And that cast starred Michael Arden as Quasimodo, Ciara Renee as Esmeralda, Andrew Szymanski as Phoebus, Eric Lieberman as Clopin, and then Patrick Page as Frollo.
Oh, and he was so good.
What's cool about this adaptation is that it's sort of an adaptation of the Disney movie, but from what I understand, it's actually more of a re-adaptation of the book by Victor Hugo. And then they just kept the Disney score and put it in where it was necessary. And so all of the songs by Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz are still around, but it's actually a darker version of the story because it's not an animated movie, for one. They take out the comedic gargoyles, I believe. Instead, the gargoyles are figments of Quasimodo's imagination. And Quasimodo is actually very deaf in this version because, I mean, he's been ringing the bells for 20 years. So as expected, he would probably go deaf. And so most of the time when he's around other people, he can't enunciate some things very well. And he sings like that too. But then when he's by himself and he's in his head, he comes out and he has this beautiful singing voice. And it is this cool contrast between interior versus exterior again, when he's around people versus when he's alone. So you've actually seen this production, not the original cast, but you saw it. So what do you have to say about anything about it?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so first of all, I'm obsessed. And I was very fortunate to see this as a Deaf West production. So our Quasimodo was actually deaf, and he was, gosh, was he incredible. He was played by John McGinty, who was stunning. There is something about this, maybe the second or third Deaf West production I've seen, and there's really something special about these productions. How it works is they have a mirror on stage, so somebody else is singing for them. And my God, it was just so incredible because his mirror played one of the gargoyles. And it was really cool to see how they interacted. It was a little strange at first, but it was so great. And Dino Nicandros, who did the singing voice, was just incredible. The Hellfire, oh my gosh, the whole theater was just like shaking. It was so good.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger organ numbers.
Yes, yeah, it was crazy. And I mean, they didn't have the huge orchestra that is, of course, the original, but it still sounded huge in there. And all the songs that aren't part of the Disney animated film are beautiful. They're stunning, and I'm usually really picky about that. And yeah, if you ever get a chance to see this musical, you have to. It's so good. It's so good. And I went in a little nervous because I'm really attached to the original recording, the original cast recording. I'm a huge fan of like Andrew Szymanski and Michael Arden, and I was like, oh man. But no, I mean, they killed it. And it's I think just because it's such a well-written show, you really can't go wrong. Also, shout out to Wicked, because you can hear some Wicked in there, which is really cool.
Right. Well, I mean, some of the new songs, you've got Rest and Recreation, which is sung by Phoebus. And I think I read that sort of actually becomes like a motif for the character throughout the show. And then you've got a song called Top of the World, which is sung by Esmeralda and Quasimodo at the top of the cathedral in that scene in the film.
Yes.
And then you've got the song Esmeralda, which is actually the finale of Act 1.
And it's a great song.
It is. And some of it comes back in the finale later, Frollo singing to Quasimodo, like, thank God that she's dead. Well, spoiler, she dies in the musical. And
yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Forgot to mention that as well. There's that, and then Flight into Egypt and Made of Stone, which is a song that you mentioned earlier. How about you tell us a little bit about Made of Stone?
Okay, so it's that moment that we were talking about before where the gargoyles are like, well, we just thought that you were made of something stronger.
Right, it's that same moment that's taken from the film and just turned into a song.
Yes, and that's essentially it. But man, it's like he's belting at the top of his lungs, and you can't not cry. If you don't cry, I mean, you're one tough cookie, because it's so good. And he's in the production that I saw, he was legit screaming. It was so good. It was so good.
That's awesome. And one more thing about the musical, I've read that he also basically becomes Quasimodo in front of you.
Yes, it's so cool.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, he comes on stage and he asks the song from the movie, which I wish we had talked about a little bit. But the question is, what makes a monster and what makes a man?
What makes a man?
Is it physical appearance or is it internal? And we know by the end it's the internal. It's how you behave towards others that makes you a monster or a man. And when he asks that question at the start of the show, he uses his fingers to paint lines or deformities on his face, and he straps on this hunch, and then he puts on the signature green cloak and becomes Quasimodo right before your eyes.
Cool.
So it's like the notion of, well, it's that question: what makes a monster? What makes a man? You look at me, and I'm a man, and then here I become the monster before your eyes. But am I any different, or am I the same? What is that? So I love that the question is sort of presented in that way as you watch this person transform.
And at the end, they all do it.
Oh, really?
Which is, which is so
that
cool.
Is really
they
cool.
all take their fingers out and put the lines on their face. And so they didn't do it in our production, in the one that I saw, but I know that in some of them, they do give the story of, and I feel like this isn't actually how it went in the novel, but anyway, they tell the tale of how many years later they found the remains of a hunched back man holding the remains of a woman. Which would then, I know, and I like, oh, come on. Like, and so, like, you know, Quasimodo made it out alive in the musical, but then went and died with her because he loved her that much. And I was just like, I can't handle it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful story. The cast recording is outstanding. Michael Arden is a fantastic singer. Listen to him. Just listen to the song Out There.
Yes.
Because Patrick Page as Frollo and Michael Arden as Quasimodo are a powerhouse. And that song is what convinced me. Well, it's really what convinced me to buy the soundtrack in the first place, the original cast recording. And I'm so glad I did, because the whole rest of it is so good too. God Help the Outcasts, I remember being particularly good. I watched the movie earlier and then I listened through the stage production. It's all just so good, guys. I mean, we could sit here and just keep telling you over and over and over again how great Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz are, but you just need to go out and listen for yourself.
You do. And I think, just as a last note from me, my favorite song that I guess was included in the original animated film, but it was sung by, who sang it? For Someday?
All for One.
All for One, thank you. It was included in the original, but sung by All for One, and I think maybe it played during the credits?
Yeah, it's the first song you hear during the credits.
Okay, so I did not catch that. But it's a featured song in the stage production, and it's by far my favorite song. It's so heartbreaking, and it happens just before Esmeralda knows she's, like, defeated. Like, she knows she's gonna die. And it's heartbreaking. Beautiful lyrics, and that's another thing that I think is elevated in the stage production, is, of course, because there's more songs and there's more time, the lyrics just kill me. There's this one, this is what I was looking up earlier. It's in the finale, and it's when the world is not, and it's at its cruelest, it's still the only world we've got. And that sticks out to me every time. And that's the same as we've been talking about this whole time, is like, be kind.
Yeah, we have a responsibility to make the world a better place.
Absolutely, it's the only one we've got. Like, yeah, it's... You guys got to see this show.
Well, I think with our ringing endorsement, again, with the bells, that is the end of the official 34th episode of Cinescope. Thank you so much for being with me tonight, Jesi.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Contact for the show, facebook.com/Cinescope Podcast and @Cinescope Pod on Twitter. Please, again, remember to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes to help us out and grow our audience. And if you have feedback or ideas, if you're interested in co-hosting and have a movie that you'd like to talk about, maybe, email at thecinescopepodcast@gmail.com. And Jesi, where can people find you online?
Well,
read us that Twitter name again.
Previously stated, my embarrassing Twitter handle is @JNellybags. And yes, you heard that correctly. That is JNELLYBAGS. And I'm on Instagram, which I think I actually have the same handle.
Excellent.
I really
Double
need
whammy.
to change this. I need to change this. Otherwise, you can email me at JesiNelsonMusic@gmail.com, and Jesi spelled with one S and an I, just like Jedi. My website is JesiNelson.com. You can contact me through there as well.
Awesome. The best place to find me is @Chadadada on Twitter. That is CHADADADA. And on Facebook.com/Chad.Hopkins. And all the show notes, all the contact information, all the weird usernames can be found at thecinescopepodcast.com. And that's all for this week. Thank you again, Jesi. It's been awesome talking to you about Alan Menken and Disney animated movies this week.
Woohoo! Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to episode 34. I'm Chad Hopkins, this was Cinescope, and we'll be back next week with episode 35. Have fun and celebrate movies.